Welcome back to another video. My name is Sean and I'm a registered dietitian. I just made a previous video on an ICU patient with Propofol to show you how I determine the rate and volume based recommendations for them. However, the math worked out just really well. It was 50 an hour or 1200 mils per day. So I changed the kcals and the protein here just a little bit so that we can do the math again together with weird, more difficult numbers, and I'll show you how I round the numbers and do the math when it's not so simple, because not all the time is the math going to be nice and straightforward. So let's go ahead and do the rate based, and then we'll do the volume based. So here, our ICU patient, which side should I stand on? Our ICU patient needs 1,800 calories. They're intubated, so I use the Penn State equation to determine them because Penn State equations are used for intubated patients. Penn State equation does not have an adjustment factor for stress or activity, so whatever the Penn State equation comes out with, that's the calorie needs of your patient. We've determined that they need 100 grams of protein. They have a medication called Propofol. This contains fat. This is a fat emulsion formula, so we need to calculate the calories from that. And then we have two different formulas here. We have Vital AF and Vital HP. Real quick, Vital AF is an ICU specific formula. It's a 1.2 calorie per milliliter. So this 1,000 ml bottle or 1 liter bottle contains 1,200 calories and 75 grams of protein. Vital HP is another ICU specific formula. That's a 1 cal formula. I don't know why that says 1.1. It's a 1 cal formula, so it has 1,000 calories per liter bottle, and it has 87 grams of protein. So let's do the math all over again from the very beginning. The question is, will this black marker actually write? So we've already determined what the patient's calorie needs are. What we have to do is figure out how many calories they're receiving from Propofol. So what you do is you take your 19 mils per hour. The pump will say either mils per hour or micrograms per kilogram per minute. You don't want that. You don't want the mics per kg per minute. You want the mils per hour. So you take the mils per hour times 1.1 kcals per milliliter. Remember, a 1.1 lipid, 10% lipid solution, which is what Propofol is. 10% lipid solution has 1.1 calories, fat calories per mil, and a 20% lipid solution has 2 calories per mil. So write that down. You'll need that at some point. So we take our 19 mils per hour times 1.1 calories per mil times 24 hours per day. And the way that this math works out is the mils cross off, the hours cross off, and you're left with kcals per day. So we'll do 19 times 1.1 times 24, which gives us 502 kcals per day. So this patient is receiving 500 additional calories per day. So we'll subtract that. They need 1,700 calories. Can we even see that? 1,700 calories. We'll subtract the calories they're getting from Propofol. In the last video, I think I just rounded to 500. Don't do that. Do the actual calories. But they need 1,800. Sorry, last video was 1,700. This video, they need 1,800 calories, but they're getting 502 from Propofol. So 1,800 minus 502 gives us a balance of 1,298 calories that we will have to provide the patient in nutrition support. They still need a whole bunch of protein, 100 grams. So let's make a little space on this board so we can do some math. Cool. So the first step that we're going to do is figure out what formula to use. The second step is we figure out what rate we're going to run it at. And then we figure out what our recommendations are for the patient and what we're going to put in our chart note. And I'll do this for rate-based as well as volume-based feedings. So we've determined that our patient needs just under 1,300 calories, and they still need all of their whopping 100 grams of protein. So what in the world are we going to do? We do the same thing every time. You take their caloric needs divided by the concentration of the formula that you're looking at to see, maybe I want to try this formula. So let's try Vital AF first. Vital AF is a 1.2 calorie formula, meaning it has 1.2 calories per milliliter. So you divide by the calorie concentration of the formula, that will give you milliliters per day. So this gives us 1,082 mils per day of Vital AF to meet their calorie needs. That's what that means. And then we divide by 1,000 to get our multiplier. That's 1.808 liters per day of formula. We multiply our multiplier by the calories and the protein. This will let us know how many calories and protein our patient will get with this amount of formula. So 1.08 times 1,275 grams of protein. Cool. So 1,200 times 1.08. This is the calories. This should always add up to this. You did something wrong if this multiplier here doesn't meet their calorie needs. This will provide 1,296 kcals and 1.08 times 75 is 81 grams of protein. So what this tells me is if I give the patient 1.08 liters of Vital AF, they will meet their calorie needs, but they'll be under on their protein. Now, one question you might have is, well, why don't we just give them more calories until we hit that protein need? The problem with that is now you're overfeeding the patient. And the problem with overfeeding ICU patients, or any patients in general, but specifically ICU patients, is you make it harder on them to be extubated. So without going into too much of the research regarding that, you don't want to overfeed your intubated patients. So we're not going to just give them more calories so that we can meet their protein needs. So I know that Vital AF is not the right formula for this patient. And the reason that's the case is because a lot of their calories are coming from Propofol. You could probably use Vital AF if they weren't on Propofol, but with my Propofol patients, I almost always use Vital HP. Without a spoiler alert, let's try Vital HP to determine if it meets their patient's calorie and protein needs. So we take their energy needs left over after subtracting from Propofol calories, divide by the calorie concentration. Vital HP is a 1 cal formula. This gives us 1,298 mils per day. We divide by 1,000. This gives us our multiplier. You can just round that up to 1.3 if you want to make that math nice and easy. So we're going to do our 1.3 times 1,000 calories per liter and 87 grams of protein per liter. So 1.3 liters of formula. We'll do this backwards here. Will give us... Oh, come on. $1.3 liters of Vital HP will give us 1,300 calories and 113 grams of protein. So 87 grams per liter times 1.3 liters per day gives us 113 grams. So I know that Vital HP will meet the patient's energy needs while also meeting their protein needs. Cool. So let's go ahead and figure out what rate this should run at. So we successfully finished step 1, which is figure out what formula we should use. That's the hard part. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the milliliters per day. We can just say 1.3, or you can take this number. They'll need 1,298 mils per day. We know that 1,298 mils per day will meet their calorie and protein needs. So what we do is we round up to the nearest 50. I'm sorry, that's for volume based. Let's do rate based. All right, we're going to divide by 24. Divide by 24 gives us 1298. Divided by 24 gives us 54 milliliters per hour. 24 hours in a day. So there's 24 hours per day. They need this many mils per day. The days cross off and you're left with mils per hour. So 54 milliliters per hour. Now we round up. We're never going to do 54 mils per hour. So 55 mils per hour. Cool. Now we have to figure out what that provides in calories and protein per day so we know what to put in our note. You don't want to say, oh, we're going to run it at 55 an hour, but it gives them, 1,300 calories. Like that 1,300 calories was based on that 54 mils per hour. We've now changed this. The numbers that we calculated earlier, those were good for this rate here, but now we've changed it. We're changing the rate slightly, so we need to recalculate our calories and our protein. 55 mils per hour times 24 hours gives us our new multiplier. 1320 mils per day, or, which is the same as 1.32 liters per day. So I know that if we run Vital HP at 55 an hour, they will get 1.32 liters per day. 1.32 liters per day times 1,000 calories per liter, 87 grams of protein. 1,087 gives you 1,320, and 1.32 times 87. 115 grams of protein. So the way that this will read in our chart note is, well, we can also do the water on here, 837. So 836 times 1.32 gives us 1104 mils of water. Cool. So recommend Vital HP at 55 an hour to provide 1,320 calories, 115 grams of protein, and 1104 mils of free water. Recommend at least 60 mils Q4 hour free water flushes. So that's what that will read if we do a rate-based equation. Now I just want to touch on one thing that I don't think I was clear about. When we go back up here, we took the calorie needs divided by the concentration divided by 1,000 because we wanted to figure out, is this formula going to provide adequate amount of protein when it provides an adequate amount of calories? So what we did is we took this and we multiplied this by our 1,000 and by our 87. So that gave us 1,298 calories, and 87 times 1.298, 113 grams of protein. We can't use those numbers down here because these numbers are only true if we run it at 54 mils per hour. So if you were to just run it at 54 an hour, yeah, you could use those numbers, assuming you didn't round up or round down or do any weird math. So that's why at the end, we run the math through one more time so we know exactly, based on our calculations, what calorie and protein and water provisions our recommendations will provide. Our first step is just to figure out, does the formula meet their protein needs? The second step is to give us an estimate on the rate, and then we round up the rate and recalculate out the calories and the protein because we've changed our rate. We've changed the liters per day that our patient will be getting. That's why we recalculate their multiplier. And then we use the multiplier with our information on our formulary, and it gives us the provisions for that new rate. Awesome. Now let's go ahead and do this as a volume-based equation. If you have any questions about these specific steps, you need me to go over anything again in detail, if whatever it is that I'm saying isn't making any sense, please let me know in the description, like you guys have access to that, in the comment section, and I'll go over just that part of the math if there's any confusion. Also, I do recommend that you check out my other videos. I've got about a dozen so far that go over this math, so maybe watching it a few more times, and I present the data in slightly different ways in each video may be helpful in you understanding how and why we do the math that we do. But if there is something that really just isn't clear, that you're just not understanding, that I'm not clarifying, I'll go ahead and make a separate video on that. So let's go ahead and do the volume-based tube feeding. So we know that the patient needs 1,800 calories. We know that they're getting 502 calories from lipids, which gives them a remaining 1,298 calories that need to be made up through nutritionist support. Propofol does not provide any protein, so they still need their full protein provision, which we decided was 100 grams per day. We take their calorie amount divided by the concentration of the formula that we think we want to use, which will give us our milliliters per day divided by 1,000 gives us a multiplier. We take that multiplier against the protein from that formula to make sure that the calorie and the protein needs are met with that formula. We've decided that this formula is the good formula for this patient, Vital HP. Vital AF did not work out on the protein. Cool. So I know that this patient needs 1.298 liters per day. When we do volume-based tube feeding, we order a certain set volume of nutrition support to be provided in a given 24-hour time frame. And this is in 50 mil increment amounts. So this patient needs 1,298 mils per day. We're going to round that up to 1,300 mils per day. Wow, this is some bad writing. Cool. So we can take that 1,300 mils, divide by 1,000, gives us our new multiplier, 1.3 liters per day. And then you can multiply that 1.3 times 1,000 and 87 and 836. So this patient will get, I'll just do a new line, 1,300 kcals. 1.3 times 87, excuse me, 113 grams of protein, and last but not least, 1.3 times 836, 1087 mils of H2O. So one thing to keep in mind when you're doing rate-based versus volume-based tube feeding, the numbers aren't always going to be identical. You're rounding up with the volume-based tube feeding based on 50 mil increment amounts, and in rate-based feeding, you're rounding up to the most nearest fifth or 5 mil increment amount. So it's not always the case that the volume will be a very nice, neat mil per hour. Likewise, if you do a mil per hour, like on this one, we got 2 liters per day, which was 55 mils an hour, right? 55 mils an hour gave us 1320. So in that equation, we would round up to like 1350 or something. In any case, volume-based and rate-based for the same patient will provide slightly different numbers most of the time. So in this patient, we'll do a volume-based tube feeding, 1,300 mils per day will provide 1,300 calories, 113 grams of protein, and 1,087 mils of free water. Recommend at least 60 mil Q4-hour free water flushes. That's what our note will be. Hopefully that helps clarify any issues from the previous video. If you like these videos, give me a thumbs up and feel free to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers.